We all know the man, the king of pop, Michael Jackson, known for his great songs, his dances, and great melodies. Well, today, we are going to explore some absurd and hard-to-believe stories that I'm sure you never knew about him. But before we continue, help me hit the like, share, and subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will leave you shocked about our famous idol. And before I forget, also comment something you would do first if you woke up as Michael Jackson for a day. Okay, let's set the stage. It's 1982. Michael Jackson is 24, he's just dropped Thriller, and he's already stupidly famous. But at this moment, he's also just a guy hanging out with Paul McCartney. Yeah, that Paul McCartney, the Beatle. They're recording The Girl Is Mine together, and during a break, I swear this is true, Paul pulls him aside and gives him some friendly advice. He says, "Michael, if you want to be really smart with your money, you should invest in music publishing. Own songs. That's where the real wealth is." Now, Paul probably thought he was mentoring a kid. What he actually did was hand a loaded weapon to a genius who would later use it against him. Thanks for the lesson, Paul. Fast forward to 1985. The ATV music catalog goes up for sale. ATV owns Northern Songs, which means it owns the rights to 251 Beatles songs. Yesterday, Let It Be, Come Together, the crown jewels. Paul McCartney, understandably, wants them. He's a Beatle. He wrote a bunch of them. He figures these should probably belong to me. So he starts putting together a bid. But there's a problem. A quiet, soft-spoken, sequin-gloved problem.
Michael Jackson also wants them. And here's the crazy part. Michael doesn't just outbid Paul. He puts down $47.5 million and scoops up the entire catalog right under his friend's nose. And he doesn't call Paul to explain. He doesn't send a note. He just becomes the owner of the Beatles, or stone of an empire. That catalog would balloon in value to over $1 billion. It became his personal bank, his collateral, his safety net, and also, unfortunately, the foundation for every bad decision that followed. If the Beatles catalog was the first stone in the empire, the next stone was, naturally, superheroes. Because that makes total sense. Sometime in the early 90s, Michael Jackson decided he didn't just want to be a pop star, he wanted to be a superhero, specifically Spider-Man. He didn't want to just play Spider-Man in a music video either. No, he wanted the actual movie role. And to get it, he didn't audition, he tried to buy the entire company that owned the rights. Yes, he tried to buy Marvel Comics. Stan Lee himself confirmed this before he passed. He said Michael came to him dead serious and said he wanted to purchase Marvel so he could star as Spider-Man. And Lee was like, "That's one way to get the part." Michael had a custom Spider-Man costume made, he had meetings, he drew up concept art of himself swinging through New York. Imagine the conversation. "So, Mr. Jackson, your qualifications for the role?" "Well, I own the role. Next question." But the deal never closed. Marvel in the 90s was a financial disaster zone. They were bleeding money. Michael's advisors reportedly told him, "Look, man, you don't want to run a comic book company. They're not making any cash." So he backed off. The Spider-Man film went to Tobey Maguire years later, and Michael never got to swing from a skyscraper. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, because now he had a taste for acquiring things. Once you've outbid a Beatle and tried to buy a superhero, what do you do for an encore? You go full Victorian curiosity shop. In 1987, Michael Jackson offered the London Hospital Medical College $50,000 for the skeleton of Joseph Merrick, the so-called Elephant Man. And when the hospital refused, he told a reporter he just wanted to talk to him. I'm not making this up. David Bowie, who was playing Merrick on stage at the time, publicly called it bizarre, and the tabloids had a field day. Because nothing says normal hobby like trying to buy a dead man's bones for a chat. Then, in 1999, Michael dropped $1.54 million at a Sotheby's auction for David O. Selznick's Best Picture Oscar for Gone with the Wind. He outbid Steven Spielberg, yes, that's Spielberg, and won the trophy. And then, he lost it. Not metaphorically, the actual Oscar vanished. To this day, nobody knows where it is. Not his estate, not the auction house, it's just gone. He spent $1 million+ on the ultimate symbol of cinematic achievement, and then misplaced it like a set of keys. While all this was happening, Michael was also quietly petitioning the British government for an actual knighthood. He had friends in Parliament, he wrote letters, he even got Uri Geller involved. He reportedly also explored buying a defunct noble title from Eastern Europe. The king of pop wanted to become a literal sir. The British press responded with the warmth and tenderness they're famous for. They roasted him alive. Now, to be fair, if you're going to be a king, you need a kingdom, and Michael built one. Neverland Ranch, 2,700 acres. He bought it in 1988 for $17 million and then poured another $35 million into turning it into his personal fantasy land. We're talking a full-on amusement park, a zoo with elephants, giraffes, orangutans, and a chimp named Bubbles who wore a suit and attended meetings, a private fire department, a security force, and I kid you not, he even had Neverland passports printed for guests. You'd roll up to the gate, get your little novelty passport stamped, and boom, you were now a citizen of Michael Jackson's micronation. The operating costs were insane. $4 to $5 million a month. Everything had to be perfect. The flowers, the rides, the candy stations, and for a while, the money from those Beatles songs kept the whole fantasy pumping. But fantasies are expensive to maintain, and Michael's spending was starting to outrun even a billion-dollar catalog. All right, pause the tour for a second. If you're enjoying this peek into the strangest empire in pop history, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps a small channel keep doing these deep dives. And drop a comment. What's the weirdest thing you'd collect if you had Michael Jackson money? I'm reading them. Now let's get to the crown jewel of this beautifully disastrous empire.
1995. The History album is about to drop, and Michael decides the best way to promote it is to build a 32-foot-tall statue of himself. Not a metaphorical statue, a literal, stone and steel, military-posed, chiseled abs holding a star monument to Michael Jackson. And then he puts it on a barge and floats it down the River Thames, past the Houses of Parliament, in broad daylight. The British press was not kind. They called it megalomaniacal, out of touch, absurd, and they had a point. Here was a pop star, a singer and dancer, presenting himself as a literal monument to be worshipped. This wasn't promotion. This was empire building in very slow motion. And in that one image, a giant Michael Jackson drifting past Big Ben like a conquering emperor, you see the whole contradiction of the man. He already had the entire world screaming his name, but he needed to see himself carved in stone to feel like he truly arrived. The tragedy is, the world mostly just laughed. Now here's the twist. There was one part of Michael's empire that wasn't absurd at all. In fact, it might be his greatest legacy, and it's locked away where nobody can hear it. For decades, Michael recorded, obsessively, not just pop songs, classical pieces, experimental electronic music, full orchestrations. Producers who worked with him say there are hundreds of finished, unreleased tracks just sitting in a vault. Rodney Jerkins, will.i.am, Brad Sundberg, they've all talked about it. Some of it is reportedly mind-blowing, stuff that would completely change how we think of him as an artist. But due to legal battles between his estate, Sony, and various collaborators, almost none of it can be released. The one empire that might actually be priceless is frozen in time. The most famous entertainer who ever lived has a secret catalog of work that we may never get to hear. He wanted to own the Beatles, own Marvel, own titles and trophies, but the one thing he fully created, his own music, is now the one thing he can't share. By 2006, Michael Jackson was in deep trouble. Court documents show he was hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. The man who owned the Beatles catalog was borrowing against it just to stay afloat. Neverland was on the verge of foreclosure. The amusement park rides were silent. The animals were being rehomed. All those empire-building side quests, the knighthood, the Oscar, the skeleton, the statue, had bled him dry. And in 2009, as a last-ditch effort to climb out of the hole, he signed on for the This Is It residency. 50 sold-out shows in London. He rehearsed like a man possessed. Those who were there say he still had the magic, but his body couldn't keep up with the dream. On June 25, 2009, the empire didn't just stumble, it ended. The king of pop was gone, and what was left behind wasn't a kingdom. It was dead, locked vaults, and a giant stone statue collecting dust. So yeah, Michael Jackson was the king of pop, but he spent his whole life trying to be something more. An emperor, a monarch, a superhero, a monument. And maybe that's the real story underneath the music. A man who gave the world everything, but could never quite feel like it was enough. If you made it to the end, you're a legend. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves weird history. And don't forget to comment. What would you do if you woke up as Michael Jackson for a day? I'm genuinely reading every single one.
This is Past in Pixels, stick figures that teach you wild stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious.